time to get in here?
Packing up a lot. It's my dinner. I ate it.
We just went live, just so you know.
Oh, great. If I'm coughing, it's all related.
Well, let's get started. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our board meeting tonight. Councilor Deaver, would you lead us in the pledge? Sorry.
Oh my gosh. I was
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John. And as per usual, at our first item is the open podium this evening, which is item 3. So always reach out to Allison and John, because I know they're both connected with anyone who, well, is virtual. And if there's anyone here in the room that would like to get up and speak on any topics that have to do with the town, you're more than welcome to do that.
The virtual attendees we have this evening are not residents, so.
Oh, okay, well, that's interesting. All right, so
They're here for the entertainment value.
is that it?
We're
Okay,
very-
missed
They're
that.
presenters that are in the room.
Oh, gotcha. The entertainment value was before
That's
the meeting
usually,
started.
that's the same thing. I remember saying.
All right, well, I guess we can, unless you have anything, John, nothing. Okay, why don't we get started here then? And we'll approval of the minutes, item number 4, September 8th.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for September 8th.
A second.
Okay, any discussion?
No.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And item 5, approval of abstract number 18.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to move approval of abstract number 14. Is it
It is 18.
18? I thought that was wrong. Number 18 of $789,105.74. We may thank Rob again.
A lot of paving going on.
Second,
Okay,
yes.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I think that number will be coming down now.
Well, it should be.
Yeah. I think we're done with the.
We also paid for some of the drainage work on Clark Hill.
Oh, right. That came out of the district too. All right, so item 6 would be to set a date for the Fayetteville fire contract. And I believe we can tie that in with the other 2 fire.
So I'd like to make a motion to set the public hearing regarding entering into a contract with the Village of Fayetteville for fire and EMS services on October 13th at 6:45.
6:45.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Excellent. And item 7, the CNY Storm Coalition Staff Services and Education. We have the contract. I think, Tim, did you want to go over that? I know Allison had that.
It's the same contract as years prior, and same dollar amount,
Yeah, so there's no change.
no change, same services.
All right, everyone's had a chance to.
So for the residents to know, this is a shared project, so we all chip in toward an Onondaga County-wide stormwater management education program. So our share is this contract and everybody else is chipping in their share. And I would make a motion to approve that.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, now, moving right along, we'll move on to number 8, which is the consideration of a municipal building located at 5440 North Burdick Street. And tonight, we have our presenters who, Tom, if you want to come up and introduce yourself and everyone else, if you can do that.
I think we have that on the screen right for everyone. And I have some handouts that everyone will be able to see, but we can certainly take some.
Thank you so much.
And Tom, if you're comfortable enough, you can do this with the computer too. Yeah, the distance.
These are all the same.
Yes. So I have a big stack of stuff to talk about. But Allison said I can't talk that much. So I'm gonna be quick.
Sorry.
So my name is Tom Serio, and I represent the developers in this project, and at this point, we still don't have a name for this project. So we actually are taking suggestions for names, and the winner is going to be able to hold a shovel and participate in the groundbreaking ceremony, wear a hard hat, and maybe take some pictures.
Yeah.
But we represent Twin Shore Properties. They are the development company that now has control of, I guess, the property that we'll call maybe the future municipal home or the Burdick Street properties. Mr. Dave Newman is here present representing the company. Mr. Newman is a lifelong resident of the Syracuse area. He's done developing through various companies as well as his own throughout the United States, and done quite a good job at that. Also, two other people include John Charters, who is not present, and Bill Hawes, who is not present. That is the Twin Shores Property Group. So getting right to the property, I mean, it's generally, as you can see, this property is east of Burdick Street. I guess you could say also east of Tarjay, right?
Well played, sir. Well played.
So the area that we're talking about for the proposal is the purple. I think it's purple in your plans.
Yeah.
This
Purplish paint.
right here. So it's about 7 acres of the entire property, which is 130 acres. So the entire parcel is 130 acres. There's 2 ponds that are on the property that I think are maybe totaling 30 acres between the 2 of them. So really what we're talking about is 100 acres of area, give or take, certainly with the DEC and environmental stuff of the developmental property. But the part that we're talking about for tonight is this area right here, which is about 7 acres for the municipal, the police, and whatever other uses that the town wants for that. And basically, what we are here for is to graciously ask for a resolution from this board to allow us and your designee to enter into negotiations for a long-term lease for this location.
Anyone have questions for Tom? Go ahead.
Oh, I don't have any.
Or comments?
Oh, does anybody have questions or comments for Tom? Because I have a little bit to say.
No, you go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just kind of want to shed some light on this for anyone who isn't aware of what's going on. So.
John, you might, would it be possible for you to go mask us for this just to hear? Thank you.
So I think as far back as 1999, the town has been looking at its needs and whether or not this building is sufficient to meet those needs. And I think over time, it's become more and more clear why a change is needed. And I just kind of want to go through those. So the first off is this building is not ADA compliant. So if we have someone who is wheelchair bound, who shows up to get their handicap permit, and they go to the wrong door, either we're telling them to go around the building and come back in the correct door, because we do only have the 2 handicap buttons. But because we lack an elevator and sufficient space to put one, what normally happens is that our fantastic clerks do a little relay race up and down the stairs 6 or 7 times to make sure everything's squared away. In addition to that, anybody who's been in the police department knows the condition of that space. Definitely not fitting a department like ours. It's, it is the very definition of duct tape, I think, at this point. Not to mention our courts, the courtroom downstairs is well below the size that we would need to have safe court proceedings, especially in this, social distancing maxed up world that we've been living in. In addition to that, the building has some HVAC issues. We've got a lot of different climate spots, much like the police department. And then if for our records management issues is we have rooms downstairs where records are stored, and on a good day, you'll make it out of there in a half an hour without suffering from dehydration and a heat stroke. And I can go on and on about the condition of this building, and this building has served the town very well for a long time. But to just that's to kind of justify why we would be looking for something, another option. And then we can kind of look at the positives of looking at a new space. So for one, connectivity, this would move our town hall out into the town. It would also connect us to Limestone Creek and the canal and the ponds that are on the property. And if you look at the map, there's the whole RA track behind it around the entirety of Limestone Creek, which I'm sure we could talk about putting trails there and making sure it's just such a beautifully connected area to the rest of, our wonderful resources. And if you look at this, it can serve as an anchor property for future development, to whether it's housing, whether it's shopping, whether it's dining. This would be an amazing opportunity to kind of turn a new space, out and make it ready for development to expand into. Then we can also think about the spaces within this building. So, when we think about this town boardroom, we have done quite a bit to try and modernize how we do our meetings. We're doing, I think, pretty good.
Now that we have two.
Depending on who you talk to in town, we're not doing very well, but we're doing the best we can with what we've got and not spending a ton of money. And so, I am looking at quotes for microphones and stuff, but the ability to have a purpose-built space. This room served the purpose of a board meeting room for a very long time, and it's done it very well. But now, when we have a public hearing that we want to have 120 people at, we just simply can't do it in the space we have. We even tried to create the lobby into an overflow room. It didn't actually go well because everyone wanted to be in the room.
Right.
And the ability to say, put a boardroom in a new building and then have a courtroom that, when needed, can serve as overflow space that could be properly mic'd, have cameras, show the board proceedings so that, God forbid, we're in a pandemic in future years and we need to socially distance. We will have the appropriate space to still conduct the people's business in a way that will kind of elevate what we do. And like I said, I love the owls. They've been a lifesaver to us, but to be able to do that in a more professional capacity so that the proceedings are recorded in for posterity and we don't have sound issues. Also too, I've been talking to the developers. We have an amazing opportunity here for community engagement to build this building to exactly what our community needs are. Whether it's a community room that we can do community programs or senior programming or youth programming, or if it's space in the back for youth activities, outdoor activities. Not to mention the possibility to make sure this is a building that is built, with sustainability in mind, following all the things we've been doing recently, making sure that we're spending the money appropriately to do the best we can to be carbon neutral, ideally, but at the very least, make it so that, this building is built sustainably, reduce our carbon footprint quite a bit. So those are kind of a number of reasons that I think this is a really interesting opportunity for us. And this is, the resolution is written, this is step one. This is us saying, the research has been done, the conversations have been had, and we are ready to bring the public to the table immediately. We want to roll it into the comprehensive planning process. We can, as we go through and people say, in whatever focus group or whatever survey that we need more public space, or we need a community room, or we need a central location that everybody can gather in. This is where we can kind of leverage this conversation about the new building or whatever it ends up becoming, to start looking to solve those problems. And also too, it's really nice that we don't have to do a massive bond to do this. It would be a lease to own, quite honestly. So when we consider the options of moving forward on this to at least having those conversations versus letting it slide and, not finding something that fits, the town's needs. In the short term, I am in full support of moving forward with this so that we can start exploring options. To make the town a little bit better.
Sure. Elaine.
So I had first I had a question. I was wondering, I know we saw phase 2 and phase 3. What was phase 1 of the first initial?
That was the 2018 report, I think.
No, that was, or was that just finishing the 2018?
Yeah, I think phase 1 was basically wrapping up what we were gonna do for phase 2 and 3.
Okay, that's fine. So that's where I'll start. So
Yes,
I have, so I've reviewed that feasibility study,
Mhm.
and I've been to at least 2 presentations on this topic. In the study, it states that its purpose was to prepare a feasibility study which investigates the design and construction of a new multifunctional municipal building. This was a study of what a new building could be. It was not a study about what our community needs. I have raised concerns and I've had questions and they're still not answered. In order to really understand what's being proposed, we need to compare, I feel like we need to compare what it will look like to update our buildings versus building new. All I have seen so far, that will cost too much to update our buildings, but I have not seen any details on how much and what specifically would be gained by residents and town employees for either option.
I think there's, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I do, and I disagree, in my opinion, that the location at 5440 North Burdick Street is a good location for the town hall. Currently, our town hall and police department are integrated into our villages. You can walk to them if you live next to them. This proposed location, I feel, is isolated. And I believe residents would only come here if you have business with the town. With more and more services going online, especially with the pandemic, how do we know what government will look like in 10 years? Has this been factored in? I also worry about the safety of the quarry ponds. The ponds.
Oh, the ponds, okay.
The feasibility study talks about driving times for our police, but currently our police are not in the building waiting for an incident. They're out in their community waiting to respond to any kind of incident. The data used in our report, in the feasibility report, I don't believe it's scaled to our town. One building they looked at in the feasibility study had a population of 130,000 people, another with 80,000. This, I don't feel, compares to our town with just over 30,000 residents. In my opinion, we still need more information on what we need for our employees and what our community needs. And we are already doing that very work right now in the comprehensive plan. This will help us make this important decision, but we can't jump in without a plan first. It has been over 30 years, even longer. We have been using our current facilities, and we have a nationally accredited police department, and I'm always very impressed with our town staff. I get that these buildings need work and that it may lead to a new building, but we need to gather all the data and information before we come to that. And I don't believe we are there yet. I don't believe we have the information we need to move forward. I also learned today that Arise does do ADA accessibility evaluations. So potentially, I'd be happy to connect with them and see if we can get one done on our current building. I don't know if one's been done before. But this is the type of information that I feel like we should have to really see what our needs are for, as well as what a new building would look like. Thank you.
Elaine, is the feasibility study that you're referencing the one from Miller?
Yes.
So building off of John's comments and Elaine's comments, I think it's really interesting. I agree that the way that this project came to us isn't in a great timeline, considering that it was a fully fleshed out and formed idea and a need that was a little more narrow than what I think we'd want to do now, right? This idea of needing a new town hall, a case that hadn't been made in public yet to the community, was something that surprised us a little bit when the new counselors came on board in 2020. However, I think it speaks to our ability to work together that we've been wrestling with and really trying to dig into the dynamics around this and the opportunities. And there are a few things that make this a compelling proposal to me. One, the court room is out of compliance as well. So it's not just the building itself, but the courtroom is out of compliance, and there will likely be future court consolidations. And even if there are, I don't believe that the town's courts would be at the ones that would be one that would be as affected as village courts might be. And in fact, village courts might need the support of a town courtroom. I also think we're going to have a police department for the next 20 plus years. And so if that is the case, it's not a great idea to have them in a former elementary school where we're paying extremely high rent for not the space that we need. So those two factors are add really to the openness I have to hear about a public-private partnership. But I don't go in, even though I think that these partners are great people, and I don't go into the idea of a public-private partnership with rose-colored glasses. I think there needs to be explicit community benefit that's laid out from the start, and also that risk is mitigated for the taxpayers. At the front end, it's really exciting to think that we could have a brand new building without bonding and without going into debt. But there will be costs that we have to look at in the transition process and everything. So that takes a lot of work and focus and effort. The commitments around, there's residential spaces right there, and perhaps through the comprehensive plan, we will determine that we need more affordable housing opportunities. So the openness of the partnership to Twin Shore Properties to working with us on affordable housing in those areas would be interesting and compelling too. And it's really exciting we got a report today from the Old Erie Canal Working Group that showed us some of the opportunities, but also the responsibilities we have to maintain the feeder canal portion. And all of these parallel planning processes, as Sarah likes to say, need to come together. So this project could not take precedence over the other projects that we have going. It would need to work in cooperation with them to be the most successful and to be the best for the people. So it's a little bit jolting to have the resolution because it sort of doesn't tell the full story. But I agree that, and maybe we can adjust the wording a little bit too, but I agree that taking a step forward to leave this very open and on the table and to be able to have confidence that we are quite interested in something like this is something I could support.
Yeah, and just so we're clear, and I haven't seen the resolution yet, but what the intent is not to bind anyone or anything. It's only to open the door to discuss what is available and what the costs are going to be. And Elaine, to go to your point, we won't know how to compare it to unless we have this to compare it to, right? So the lease certainly is going to know by the time we're done with the negotiations, we're going to know what the costs are. We're going to know what the building kind of looks like, and then we'll have a hard number to compare with. In the meantime, if anyone wants to do a feasibility study here, you'll be able to compare it. So that's all this resolution does, is just open that door for exactly what you're talking about.
Anybody else?
I have, after listening to this, an extremely mundane question is, who owns that?
Who owns what?
Great question. So there's a little square right up here. Well, actually, it's not a
Isn't it
square.
power?
Oh, that little
Isn't it
thing.
National Grid maybe?
No.
That is a rhombus.
What is it, a rhombus?
I
there.
I have no idea that's a
So
rhombus.
I'm quite sure the village of
Parallelogram?
Fayetteville owns that.
Oh, yeah, I think.
Okay, that would make sense.
Yeah, it is there enough. I'm not even sure what they do with it, but
Okay.
they are the title deed.
All right. And the other one's the utility. This one here is the utility.
Yeah.
Can I share some of my thoughts?
Absolutely.
So I think that what's interesting about this is that Elaine is right. There's a lot of unanswered questions. We have to do a ton of research and digging, as we already have been. These conversations have been happening a little bit behind the scenes. And this is something that a lot of the staff inside town hall have been asking for. And as Heather mentioned, it was brought to our attention right as soon as before we were even sworn in. And I was surprised at the time. I work in the private sector, and I understand the benefits of tax equity and real estate development and the benefits to the town on that side of the equation. And when you're looking at something like this and you're factoring in kind of the total return, the capital you have to invest, plus the money you have to put out, we're spending so much money on our police department as it is. So I think that we have to really look at this holistically. It's not just about lease payments versus rent at the village. It's maintenance of this building. It's energy inefficiencies in this building. If we're just looking at the dollars and cents, I do want to be able to draw as close of a comparison as we can. So this to me is not even remotely close to a commitment. It's simply entering into and bringing it into the public's eye. Let's read this resolution, decide how we want to move forward so that we can have this conversation with the public included. I fully am supportive of moving forward with the resolution because I'm curious to see how we can have this conversation and where it goes. And to do so in a public setting. But I share some of Elaine's concerns. But I mean, I think, yeah, this is kind of landlocked and or it's like, it is a little bit off the road there. So let's look and see how we might be able to address some concerns. And that's what I want to do. I want to start asking those questions. My biggest concern was capacity. This is a huge project. We have the comprehensive plan. We have so many other things going on. Our staff inside town hall is burdened and they're overworked as it is. We have, we don't want to give them more responsibilities, and something like this would be a massive project to take on. So I have some concerns on that side as well, but I want to move forward because I want to have questions of some of this stuff.
Yeah, and I just want to speak as a 12-year veteran on the board, and the many, many meetings that we have had and discussions about this very building, and certainly about the police department over the years in 1986, right? Chief? No, that was
The
supposed to be
temporary
a
1983.
Yeah, temporary building.
facility. And I don't want to say how many decades have passed, but we have looked at different locations. We've looked at building. We certainly have put many, many Band-Aids on this building. Worked extensively with the village of Manlius and trying to get the police station up to par, really. So, I'm intrigued. I think this is a very interesting project. Again, we've looked at other opportunities for this location on North Burdick. And I think to at least start the conversation with the resolution, it's just going to provide more information, which we certainly have a lot of questions with the lease agreement, certainly costs. But nothing would happen without more community input, and that's always a great thing to have. So I'm excited. I think it's exciting.
Do we want to
Thank you.
explain a little bit what this resolution will do, since we're talking about it?
Sure.
That's not going to be me, so.
Before we do that, let me just do a little wrap up of what everyone said.
Yeah, please, thank you, Supervisor.
As history would have it, when we first started talking about this 4 years ago at least, the private-public partnership was not part of the conversation.
Interesting.
It was, let's see where we can find a location where it's centralized, where we can give some relief to where the police are currently located. And Elaine, you bring up a good point. It isn't the southernmost tip, but it is an old building. And you pointed out that the central location is really an important part of it. And it is in the town. And we did look at, we looked at 5, I think, different locations, I think, Terry, at one point. And that was before we really got into the nuts and bolts of how can we do this? And what about this building? And we did look back and we saw that to add the police to it, there was no room to move to do that. Yeah, we could improve the building somewhat. Once you do ADA, then you have to follow a lot of other procedures too, because right now it's not ADA compliant because it doesn't need to be. It was built before it had to be.
Right.
So we looked at all those things. And we did, when we finally looked at locations, and as you recall, we sort of came to the least expensive, which was at the time was the landfill, because we owned that. And then that became a DEC issue. And we even brought in the town supervisor from DeWitt, Ed McLinkle, to help sort of convince the DEC that we can do this, They weren't as convinced as we were. But so a lot has happened over this period of time, and there has been a lot of discussion. And you're right, when you guys first came on, we made sure that we introduced this whole project because 2018, which is now 3 years ago.
I know.
That was when we brought it to the public. in a public meeting about the feasibility study. So that was the first discussion. And I think it's important what you're saying, as far as we were focusing on bringing the police, bringing the courtroom and compliance, bringing recreation to a higher level. It was really about what we were going to do with our operation. Now, what we've done with the comprehensive plan and with the bringing in the community, it expands that process. And we can look at feasibility issues that are important. We can look at other opportunities, as you said, John, as far as other buildings going up there, possibly parks, who knows, So there's a lot of positive information here, but a lot of questions is still, I think we all want to get it and be answered. And this is a beginning. I think the resolution, and we're bringing it to the public, we're going to learn about it, and there'll be input, I'm sure. I might get a lot of emails and phone calls probably tomorrow. So with that, I just wanted to bring that together, that it wasn't until, I'm going to say, a year or so ago when I think it was Terry brought that private-public concept to us, and we said, and it's not going to cost us any, well, it's not going
To be true.
Yeah, right. But I mean, it made a lot more sense because you're seeing that more. You're seeing that more often today.
Well, it makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
It's just you're taking advantage of all of the financial structures that are beneficial to both public and private entities.
Yep. So I just wanted to sort of bring that, and everyone has made an excellent point, and we all do still have concerns that we need to work out.
There's one anecdote that I thought of earlier that you're reminding me I wanted to share, that when before we got sworn in, the four of us, we met with Mayor Olson of Fayetteville, and he mentioned that they had done a ton of retrofitting to their building, and that he had regretted that he wished that they had just built a building because it was so expensive. And once you open the walls, he said it was extremely expensive, and that they are already needing to make new improvements, and that he said a public-private partnership would have been great. I guess an opportunity had come by. So it's something that I'm excited to consider for our town.
And I'm sure he mentioned to you, because it was not a new location, they were limited to the number of years for the bond. They can only go 15 years.
Wow.
And
Which makes it heftier payment.
that's why Manlius was able to get a much better, even though it might cost more.
Well,
Yeah.
Barbara Rovette would probably tell the story about how the first town board meeting was held in a pub, and they kept all the records in a safe, or in someone's house, which is not great. But I think there is also this idea, we have to evolve and think about this idea of what an asset is. And the asset side of our town is our land and our people, I think. And so I think if we can, I like the idea of opening up to this idea and giving public-private partnerships the best name they can have too, versus ones that have been maybe really community spirited and name only, but not in practice.
And we don't want the building to go out of compliance either. We have to look at 50 years down the road.
Yeah.
And I think like to going remote, to your point, Elaine, I think it's a well-warranted question, but I think it's impossible to forecast the future. So if we start in 10 years, we still won't know 10 years with that. So we can make as wise decisions as we can. And it's interesting because a lot of people in our community that might advocate for small government might not want us to invest this much money in a new building when they want government to be smaller than it is. But this is the bread and butter. This is our staff inside town hall having the ability to conduct the town's business, the people's business, as John so eloquently phrased it. And then we can build out the robust government recreation and sustainability and everything that makes our community so great that everyone loves so much. So I don't know, I'm very excited. I was glad to see that we finally have this on the agenda.
Yep, very good.
So I will just.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
If you want to
So
touch on a few
basically,
things.
we go through a bunch of why we're here, and essentially be it resolved that the attorney for the town is hereby authorized to enter negotiations with the developer to determine the costs associated with the development of the new town hall. And then a lease shall be developed with the detail and term conditions associated with the rental of a new town hall. And that said lease will be brought before the town board for final approval, and that lease will be subject to a mandatory referendum. So this is step one, we lay out what's next, and everybody still gets a say in the process.
Right.
Mr. Serio, I have a question. Do you have any idea about how long this will take? Or you get back to us at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's a pretty simple process if you break it down and look at it on paper, right? So this resolution hopefully will be passed tonight, and that opens the door for everyone to start negotiating and talking, right? However long that takes. I suppose there will be opinions about how long it's gonna take, but however long that takes, then it becomes an issue that is before this board again for approval of entering into the lease for that particular building and project. Once that's done, the developer then anxiously gets right over to the planning board for site plan approval. We go through that process and maybe, maybe they'll start doing that a little bit peripherally in anticipation of an agreement, not to be presumptuous, but to save time. Once that's done and the planning board approves it, they run right over to the permit department, pay the fees for the permits, get the permits, and then that's when everyone comes back with their shovels, hard hats, and we do a groundbreaking ceremony and it starts happening.
Right.
So would the, in terms of the lease, like this is authorizing us to have preliminary discussions of what it might look like, like as many qualifying words as you could list, discuss a lease for this parcel, this piece of this parcel.
Yeah.
What's the plan for the rest of it? And who has control of that?
So, well, the developer has control over it, right? Certainly, well, that's a two-part, part of who has control. The developer has control of it to the extent of working with the town and the planning board of what they want to see, right? So ultimately, I guess the board and the developer has control over the property to determine what's going to be there. But what initially will happen, Caitlin, is that the whole parcel, like right now, there are, I think, how many tax ID numbers? Six different tax ID numbers for this parcel. So all of it would go in front of the planning board, and then we would kind of re-subdivide the whole thing so that there would be separate tax ID numbers. For example, there would be a separate tax ID number for the municipal parcel. And then whatever was planned for, let's say, affordable housing, that would probably be a complex where there would be one tax ID number. If there was individual single-family homes, each home would have its own tax ID number. So that process would take place as well during the planning board stages.
Because the one thing I would want to make sure that we had clearly identified and agreed to, very as legally concrete as we might, is that if we did locate our town hall in here, I could see a lot of these parcels or this parcel subdivided becoming much more desirable.
Sure, absolutely.
And I would want to preserve the integrity of the natural
Yes.
environment and tie it, like, I wouldn't want all of a sudden we build it and then to see it like just turn into a bunch of Tarjays or like that. I would feel very disappointed in myself that I didn't steer that in a better direction.
Man, you got great questions.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so the two ponds are not going anywhere, right?
Right, yeah.
And there's a big area in the back, like Limestone Creek, that's not going anywhere, right? And all the areas around that is there. And by the way, one nice feature of this that will tie in, and I think maybe John mentioned it, is the canal, the New York State Canal, the Erie Canal, where there's a rockable bed.
Yeah.
This will tie into it. So it's gonna create like a kind of a little village in and of itself of this 100 acres. Kind of like the 100-acre woods that.
Don't make this about me.
Well, that's, we were talking a little bit earlier about how we don't talk enough about the fishing, the quality of fishing that's really available within Limestone Creek. So, and the Old Erie Canal Working Group was talking about wanting to have like a concessions area and also make it easier for people who are on the canal to camp and all these things. So there is an interesting opportunity about having maybe it within recreation or thinking about the possibilities of engaging with that natural space through the property. It's really, that's a really interesting, because we think about sustainability. Recreation programs right now are pure service and are completely underwritten, but it would be nice to have a stronger revenue stream that's based on tourism that the municipality would have a stake in.
Is there a way that we could get our feet, can we go here? Can you take us there? Can we go?
We can. That's probably gonna take us a couple weeks to finalize that, but yes, we can.
Weather's turning fast, so.
And
And I might not be reelected, you never know.
Your boots?
we'll still invite
I
you.
can go. I was really excited about that.
So.
So a lot of these things
So are we
will come
including-
down the line, but it's interesting to think about, yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to add? Tom?
Nothing. No,
Okay.
thank
Go
you
ahead,
for all
John.
your time.
Yeah, thank you,
So-
and everyone's good out
All
there. Yes, please.
So, Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make.
John, I just wanna-
Tim did jump in.
I want to kind of address a couple of the things that Elaine brought up, because I think.
You're gonna have to speak up a little bit.
They're very important points. As everybody has explained, this resolution is the very initial step to begin discussions about this opportunity, right? This is a separate and distinct opportunity that this town board has to kind of explore the possibility and feasibility of a public-private partnership for a municipal building. That does not foreclose any other paths. That this is not an exclusive agreement. It's not intended to be an exclusive agreement. There will, I suspect, be many paths toward the end goal, which is to have suitable space for the employees of the town of Manlius and the public to come into the town to take advantage of the services that are provided, and to have public spaces available so that they can observe the town board in action. And to consolidate the police with the town. All of those things, efficiency. I just want to make a comment about the resolution as it relates to the referendum. First of all, this project, because it would be a municipal project, as it relates to the town hall, planning board issues, we're gonna have to kind of go along with and determine how much the planning board is gonna be involved in it or not. But that's a separate distinct issue. Leases, the lease that we would enter into is subject to what's called permissive referendum, as we discussed before. However, what you can do by permissive referendum, you can also do by mandatory referendum under Chapter 7 of town law. And my discussion with most everybody here was that that's the way that this town board is going to want to go. So in the end, nothing can get done unless you're able to convince the people of town Manlius that this is a good idea.
And it would have to be on, would it have to be on the ballot during, like on election day, or?
You can have a special election. I suspect that it would be, you're looking at least until next year. So those are the realities, the practicalities of what we're discussing tonight. Is that, but you could always hold a special.
So it's not like we're gonna be rushing to do this by next November. We could do it in the following March if we needed more time or whatever.
Whatever made the most sense. So that's really all.
Yeah,
I
no,
had
that
to
was
say.
good. That's good too.
But I wanted to point that out.
I'm glad you did, yeah.
Tim, what's our liability at this point in terms of how could these partners sue us if we had a change of heart?
They
or
can't.
anything?
There's no, because you authorized me to begin the discussions. I'll do this under. It's not gonna cost you anybody for me to do it.
Thank you.
So we'll enter into those discussions and we'll really explore on this. So there's no getting around the fact that somebody's going to pay for the financing of this building. It's either going to be lease payments or it's going to be bond payments. So
Which don't look very different.
they don't look very different except for the upfront costs of bonding, which could be substantial.
And liability.
Yes,
that
and
we're not
the
taking the
liabilities
risk.
that are associated with the ownership of the building. So
We want to know what the market is like for commercial real estate like this to sell this building.
Of course, and that has to play
Many-
into this discussion also.
Many
is how much-
unanswered questions.
That's another point. So
Hopefully someone was writing all these down.
Yeah, well,
I wrote yours down, Caitlin.
I had a very good one.
The retail residential office development, how that's gonna, because it's a good point. How is the rest of the development
Yeah.
around what might be a town hall, how is that gonna be developed and how is that going to complement town hall? That's that should be negotiated in some way. That should be. set
Walt
down.
Disney built Disney World after Disneyland got swallowed up by hotels and restaurants and everything else. Because he had too small of a parcel. That's something to be.
And
mindful
I think to Tim's point.
Town hall is
that-
a nice place. I don't know about this.
I like to think of it like Disneyland.
And we did, these things that you mentioned, the lease payments, maybe we should have said that. I mean, how much we've been paying that and the value of this building, which is paid for, so all the, and we know what real estate is now, but this would be commercial. So,
Or we
So-
could rent it out. We could maintain ownership.
That's a different issue.
Well, we can answer all these questions over the next
but again,
18
these
months.
were a lot of the things, Caitlin, that we've been sort of.
You can't
Yeah.
build space to lease, that the comptroller he'll frown upon that.
Oh, okay, always something. All right, so go ahead, John. Are we set to go on this?
All right, Mr. Supervisor.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the resolution as presented, to authorize the town attorney to enter into negotiations with the developers to look at possibilities of a new town hall.
Okay.
I'd be happy to, or Karen be.
Okay.
Yeah, like,
Wait a
please,
second.
Karen.
And I know we've had discussion, so I'm just going to say, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Good job,
everyone.
Elaine.
You guys almost convinced me.
You did like jump
I was
up.
like,
You
oh,
did.
that's
good.
good.
That's fine.
Good. We shouldn't all always vote unanimously.
I'm going
It's good when
to
we
take-
don't.
The information, but I still,
You guys can say for the rest, it really is like Disneyland.
Scintillating, thank you.
Very, very. amazing.
Oh, all right.
We try to
Well,
have fun.
we get really fun now. I get to present my tentative budget. You guys are hanging around. Thank you.
We'll definitely wait for that.
It's that time of year.
Krista?
Budget. Yeah, and that too. Yeah, so I've been working on the tentative budget and has been working diligently on this tentative budget, and I happen to be in the room when she was doing it. No, we banged out a lot of lines, and of course, meeting with all the department heads, and, police and highway. As you know, we have a very sizable budget in the town of Manlius. And the tentative budget, just got a few notes I want to make on it. It's a general town operation fund budget. It does not include the districts. Okay, so that's important to be aware of. This is the first draft of the budget, where all the components are put together. Planned revenues, expenses, contingencies, and the first mechanism to derive a tentative tax rate for 2022. The budget will be presented to the board this evening for your review and for markup. It's the town board's responsibility to update this budget if necessary, which it will be, I'm sure, and present to the public as an official preliminary budget. It is a preliminary budget which will be adopted on October 13th, 2021. That's the adopted date. And then it will be subject for public hearing on October 27th. In developing the budget, we are measured by both state and by our own priorities. I believe we should always strive to meet the tax cap, which is this year's 2%, as we're all aware of. As opposed
Strive to be under the tax cap?
Pardon me?
Strive to be under the tax cap?
We tried to be. Last year was 1.56. And I know that, and I mentioned this, I know we kept the operation fund under the tax cap. It was the districts that really was difficult to maintain that. Of course, the state comptroller recommends certain percentages for our fund balances. I did make some minor changes on these where I maintained some, I reduced some. This will be part of the discussion, as you know, going forward when the Finance Committee meets and the board to review the preliminary budget. Some of the open items, which there are always are open items because we don't have everything in yet. First is our health insurance rates. They're not known yet. Last year, we had a 10% increase. I'm on the OSEBA board, so I have and we get reports every month of how we're doing as far as our balances and our experience in the town. Our experience has improved this year. So I actually used a 9% increase this year. Who knows? They won't be coming out with the true rate until they meet again. They're doing that this month, October. We should probably have some final numbers for that. We also do not have our unallocated insurance quotes yet. They be our liability insurance, basically the commercial coverage there. We're waiting on that information from Hiller, Frank, Kuhn. And of course, we're waiting on the final confirmation of our New York State retirement. And we use tentative numbers at this time. One thing I can point out, last year, if you recall, we weren't sure about the AIM funding. That was up in the air. I reached out to the Association of Towns this past week, and they explained that because it is still tied into the sales tax, it should remain the same amount. So I did include it in the tentative budget this year. So due to these open items, the tentative tax rate is traditionally higher anyway until we, get working on it, get to the preliminary, and then get to the final budget. Last thing to mention, and I know we bring this up when we do our proposals or our presentations, is the state controller's fiscal stress monitoring through December 2020, based on our updated AUD, the annual updated document that Matt puts together for us. We stayed at 3.3 for the fiscal. We actually dropped on the environmental from 10 to 3.3. So lower scores are better, okay, just in case to remind everyone. But we'll get into more detail with that when we get closer to the final budget. So with that, I know the town clerk is way over there, but I want to hand this over to our town clerk. That will be put on our website and all that. So,
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
you're welcome.
And Ann.
And Ann. Oh, my goodness.
Thank you.
And man,
And
I mean,
all
it
of
was
the
like
department
it was like the hour, we're trying to get all
Yeah.
these things finalized. So,
A lot of work.
okay. All right, next, we have the input on the I81 project. I think Sarah, you have been on top of this, and we had a letter that.
So as everybody knows, the federal government and the state government are working on a plan for Interstate Route 81 in Syracuse. And they've been doing that for many years. I've been actually involved in it peripherally from the beginning and have been gone to a number of their workshops. So at this point, Route 81 itself nor 481 do not really come through the town of Manlius, but we do believe that they impact the town of Manlius. Both at Linden Corners and at Kirkville. So the nature of the letter that we are proposing to send to the Department of Transportation during the public input period, which was extended and is still open, is to comment particularly on the issue around which we have discussed for many years here, the truck traffic going to CSX at Central Ave in Fremont and the traffic on Fremont Road and Kirkville Road, and proposing an alternative in collaboration with the town of DeWitt that will make changes to the Kirkville exit off of 481 that will become Route 81 and directly to the rail yard at DeWitt. So our rail yard is called the DeWitt Rail Yard. The rest of it's in East Syracuse, which is also called the DeWitt Rail Yard, but that's where the trucks could go. So it does require CSX to cooperate with that because they have to change their internal routing along the tracks where the trucks go. But we do believe that this is a better solution certainly for our residents, the schools, the air pollution, the traffic, the noise, all that stuff. And it's also a better solution for DeWitt, which is very interested in this. So we believe that by tying it into the Route 81 renovations, they've already got to do mitigation up 481. They're going to do some sound barriers, some widening, changing the exits. that we think this is a good opportunity for us to do that. So that's what we're asking.
Yep, and that's what your letter is that, I don't know if we need to,
It's in our online, people can go and read it if they. click
oh,
on
so
our
I don't
agenda.
need to.
No, we're just
I
authorizing you to
still have
sign it.
and Send it off, yeah.
Just authorize the supervisor, I make a
Yeah.
motion to authorize the
Right.
supervisor to sign the letter.
I'll
Yeah,
second.
Okay.
Sorry, Heather.
All in
No.
favor?
Aye.
Those carried. Very
And
good.
I would suggest that anyone who's interested in understanding it, please read the letter.
Oh, it's great.
Very clearly lays out
Yeah.
exactly what we need,
Yeah.
and exactly what we're asking for at a
Yeah.
time when we're gonna be breaking ground anyway. Why wouldn't we fix these problems rather than having to fix them ourselves?
After you send the letter, we should follow up, like,
Oh, yeah.
because it's the DOT and then it's CSX.
Yeah.
We should try to stay on top of them because I think we could really get this to be a part of it if we advocate for our community.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent idea. And I forget what I was gonna say.
Sorry.
That's okay.
All that conversation about Inland Port was a nice
Oh,
form.
my goodness.
Oh, man,
yeah,
when
we-
you were like, this would be a better solution, I was like, yes, it would.
Yeah.
Even
Very
simpler,
much,
I had
very much so.
flashbacks to it.
So, all right, it'll probably come to me at the end, you know. That's all right. Okay, and Rob, you are up next with
Yeah,
your letter. You got it.
Mine should be fairly easy here. I know during the workshops, for our budget workshops, I had mentioned to the board then that I was contacted by Eagle Associates, and obviously, through our budget process, work with my liaisons here at the town board, that we're looking to put a new covering and steel on top of our self-storage shed. Obviously, it's a national contract, so we'd be able to purchase off of it. But during our process of putting all these numbers together, there's going to be an increase in like a 20% increase coming the 27th of this month. Obviously, I mentioned that before. So what I mentioned about putting a letter of intent together, Eagle Associates will accept a letter of intent for this town board to move the process forward, so that we will hold that price for us going into next year, so that we won't be susceptible to that increase. So I prepared the letter, so I guess I would need just a motion to, and I have sent the letter out to the board here. So I just, have to add the supervisor sign the letter, and I'll get it to Eagle Associates and they'll hold us for that. the
So
cost.
I'll make a motion to authorize the supervisor to sign the letter to Eagle Associates.
I'm waiting for him. He's reading.
Would you mind if we added
No,
one
no,
sentence that said, subject to an appropriation by the town board?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no issues with whatever.
So amended.
So-
Yeah, so amended, yeah.
Who made this original motion?
I did.
You did, okay, so amended.
I'll second
All right.
that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's carried. Very
Because we
good.
can't spend any money if it's not approved.
That's right. That's right.
Exactly.
Okay, Rob, do you have anything else?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, good. Tim, did you have anything?
I don't.
Oh, so good. Okay, Allison, I'm crossing those other things off that I thought you were going to talk about. So what do you have?
Nothing.
Nothing. Oh, well, that was okay. So there we go. All right, Chief, you're up, sir.
Yes, yeah.
Pardon?
No.
No, he said he didn't.
So if we could just take that in there.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll make the change.
Chief,
Just some update on staffing. We still have one in the Oswego County Academy and the Oswego County Police Academy, and he's doing well. Our one transfer candidate is started with us already. We're getting him all spun up with our field training. The two that were in the Boone County Police Academy are out, doing really well.
Oh,
We're
good.
gonna start field training. We have a lot of people in field training over the next 12 weeks. And then the one gentleman that we hired recently is going to start the Onondaga Academy in 2 weeks.
oh, okay, great.
We're doing really good at filling those vacancies.
Yeah, excellent.
Great qualified people.
What is the average age of new recruits and how long does it take them to go into training or go through training?
I don't know about the average age, but in order to take the civil service exam, which is the first step in the process, you have to be, I think the cutoff age is 27 or something like that, so
Oh,
pretty young
You'd have to be younger than that.
to take the exam.
Wow. So you can't decide to be accounted for.
these were up. We're all.
Age limitation.
I've been watching a lot of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. so.
Oh, of course.
The school year got off to a great start, I understand. The school year. the new
Oh,
school
yeah,
year.
yeah.
So with the
And our new SPO, he'll be starting soon as well. I have a meeting, a final meeting with them, get the job offer next week, next Monday, I believe. So
Good.
FM's real excited about
Yeah.
him starting.
Good.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
And Town Manager, Ann, what do you have for us this evening? Yeah, and I can't say enough about how much Ann has really put into this and continues to do so as we meet in our finance committee whenever that begins, which will be October,
Next
I think.
week.
Next week.
Yeah, I
right.
think well, next week's October.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It is. All right.
Pay your school taxes, everybody.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So good. So committee reports, Sarah, you wanted to update
Yeah,
on the solar, I think.
I wanted to let people know that the solar study group met on Monday, and we would like to thank Bill Oberker from NYSERDA for presenting to us with regard to the host community agreements, which is one of our questions that we
Yeah.
had. And Tim is already in negotiations with the CVE company that is the one still in process to get a host community agreement. So that's where we're at.
I was very informative. Tim, I was sad you didn't come.
I'm sad I didn't.
I'm sad I didn't invite you.
I'm not that sad.
John, did you have something for us tonight? I'm trying to remember who else.
Just have emojis for our
Yeah.
meeting instead of words.
I was just trying to remember. I know we've had so many discussions these last couple of days. All right, very good. All right, the only thing I have is my supervisor's report tonight. So you've all seen it, I believe. And then I
We
know
just
you
want to remind
read it.
people about the focus
I did
groups
read
too,
it.
if we could.
The,
The community comprehensive plan focus groups,
okay,
just to
ahead.
simply, just to remind people, thank you very much. I see that William Nicholson is here, who led affordable housing. Thank you so much, along with Rick Hall and Don Gates.
Yep.
And Kate De La Garza is helping. Alice Massa and Pamela and Malcolm Bender helped to lead the
Oh, okay.
historical preservation focus group on Tuesday. And we will have on September 27th, the environmental sustainability focus group
Oh.
from 6 to 7:30 at the Fayetteville Library. And September 28th will be parents and caregivers, 6 to 7:30 at the Fayetteville Library. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. You never know with the committees who's gonna.
I know we tried to,
All right,
you
so-
tried to get us some, I can't.
I can talk more.
No, we're good, we're good. Right, okay, so we'll do my documents now. Does anybody want to approve those? Approve my supervisor's report?
Yes. I'll make a motion for you to submit your supervisor's report to.
Sign off on it.
Yes.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Okay.
Opposed? Carried. Excellent.
That's my nighttime reading.
And the number 18, I see adjournments written there, because I don't have anything else.
I can't believe we didn't adjourn 3 minutes ago. That's all I have to say.
Oh,
Mr. Supervisor, I will make a motion to adjourn.
do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Very good.